Today I'm going to be reading Rowley Jefferson's awesome, friendly, spooky stories. Let's start. Boo! Did that scare you? If it did, maybe you should put this book down and pick something else that's a little less scary. There are some good books about unicorns and puppies and other happy things that you can read until you're ready for a book like this. But if you like stories about skeletons and zombies and human heads, then crawl under the covers and turn the page. And if you get too scared, then you can always sleep in your parents' bed. But please don't tell them the reason you get spooked, because I really don't want them to be mad at me. The Changing. There was a boy named Rowan, and Rowan was a happy child. He had two parents who loved him very much, and he had lots of toys to play with. Sometimes Rowan would bring his toys to school and play with them at recess, but he stopped doing that after he got bullied by some jerks. Grow up, baby! That made Rowan sad, because he thought playing with toys was the best thing about being a kid. But Rowan's classmates didn't feel the same way, and they were always trying to act older than they really were. One day, Rowan was in class. He felt a strange tickling sensation under his armpit. He didn't know what it was, so he asked his teacher, Mrs. Pennington, if he could be excused to use the restroom. When Rowan got to the bathroom, he took off his shirt and was shocked to see a single hair growing from the center of his armpit. Rowan didn't know what to do, so he put his shirt back on and returned to class. And when he sat down, he felt like everyone in the classroom could tell something was different about him, even Mrs. Pennington. When the final bell rang, Rowan ran all the way home. He knew his mother kept some tweezers in the bathroom, and he couldn't wait to use them to pull out that hair. But when Rowan took off his shirt, he could see it was too late for tweezers. Suddenly, hair started sprouting all over Rowan's body, and before long he was practically covered in it. Sproing, boing, sprung. By now, Rowan was totally panicky. He went through his parents' bathroom cabinet to see if there was anything that might help, and he found something he thought would do the trick: hair remover. But there's a reason kids shouldn't go poking around in their parents' bathroom cabinets, because 2 seconds after Rowan opened the bottle, he passed out from the fumes. Faint. When Rowan woke up, he was in bed. At first, he thought maybe the whole thing with the hair was just a bad dream, but one look at his arm told him that it wasn't. Rowan's parents walked into his room, and he was afraid they were going to be mad at him for opening the bottle of hair remover without asking. But they didn't look mad at all. In fact, they seemed kind of happy. Rowan's parents said they've been waiting for this day for years, and it was time for them to have the talk. Rowan thought they already had the talk when parents told him how babies were made, but they said this one was a totally different talk. His parents said that sometimes when a child turns a certain age, their body starts to go through a changing, and that made Rowan sad because he liked himself just the way he was. But by now, Rowan thought he knew where this was heading, so he asked a question that had been on his mind all day: am I becoming a man? Well, that made Rowan's parents laugh, and Rowan felt embarrassed because it took them a long time to stop laughing. Ha ha ha, ha 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 ha. After Rowan's dad wiped his tears from his eyes, he said Rowan was still a boy, but he was a different kind of boy, and when Rowan asked him what he meant by that, his dad gave him some bad news. This was definitely not what Rowan wanted to hear, but when Rowan's mom saw the worried look on her son's face, she said that this was a day to celebrate. Rowan's parents told him he came from a long line of werewolves, and suddenly the pictures on the staircase wall made a lot more sense to Rowan. Then Rowan's parents gave him some more bad news. They said they were both werewolves too. Rowan started remembering clues growing up that should have told him that his parents were real werewolves, but I guess deep down he didn't want to admit the truth. Shave, shave. Aroo! Then Rowan started crying. He said he just wanted to be a regular kid and have a normal life. But his parents said that werewolves could live a perfectly normal life as long as they kept on top of their grooming and hid who they really were from the rest of the world. Rowan didn't want to hide who he was, though. He had always been taught to be himself, and that's what he planned to do. But Rowan's parents told him that there are ignorant people in the world who didn't like anyone who was different. And Rowan knew exactly the type of people his parents were talking about. Then Rowan asked his parents a question he wasn't sure he was ready to hear the answer to. But don't werewolves eat people? Rowan's parents looked a little uncomfortable and said that was a subject for another talk later on. But Rowan had a feeling he knew the answer to his question. So the next day, he brought his toys with him to recess. And this time, nobody dared to mess with him. Rowan's example inspired his parents to stop hiding who they were, too. And from that day on, Rowan and his family lived as their true selves, and everyone else has just had to deal with it. Aroo! The Prankster. In a little seaside village somewhere in Europe, there lived a man named Jasper, and everyone knew who Jasper was because he was the village prankster. Most of Jasper's pranks were pretty harmless. One time he covered the baker's car in a gift trap, another time he filled the village's only phone booth with popcorn. He, snort. Sometimes Jasper would even prank his own family members, and his mother never really forgave him for gluing all her furniture to the ceiling. But Jasper's most famous prank was the time he put the mayor's underwear up a flagpole, which everyone thought was pretty hilarious. Well, everyone except the mayor. Jasper, ho ho, he, snarf. That was the thing about Jasper's prank. Most people thought they were pretty hilarious, unless you're the one being pranked. Splorsh. Anyway, one morning, Jasper woke up trying to figure out who he was going to prank next. He couldn't decide if he wanted to toilet paper his next-door neighbor's house or replace the baker's cream-filled donuts with toothpaste. The toilet paper thing felt like a lot of work, and it had been a while since Jasper pranked Joris, the baker, so Jasper decided he'd go with the donut thing for today. Jasper got out of bed and brushed his hair, then headed up the hill to the bakery. On the way there, he passed a few people he knew. He waved to Marion, the dressmaker, and Mickey, the cheesemonger, but neither one waved back. But he figured they were just sore at him for covering their shop windows in mustard the week before. Things got stranger when Jasper walked into the bakery. His friend Dieter, the shoemaker, was walking out, and when Jasper said hello, Dieter ignored him. And a few seconds later, when Martha, the librarian, walked to buy her daily baguette, she walked past Jasper like she didn't even see him. When Martha went to the counter to buy her bread, George was distracted, and that's why when Jasper made his move. He pulled out the tube of toothpaste out of his pocket and grabbed the glass lid of the donut platter. Or at least he tried to, because when Jasper reached for the lid, his hand went right through it. Jasper was so confused that he ran outside and onto the street. But what happened next upset him even more, because when he stood in front of the mirror shop, he didn't have a reflection. Jasper realized that no one could see or hear him, and when he made a complete fool of himself, nobody noticed. Wooga-looga-loo. Even when Jasper barged in on the Mommy and Me class at the yoga studio, everyone just kept doing their thing like he didn't exist. Yeah, ha, ha, ha. Jasper tried talking himself and thinking this was a good thing, because if no one could see him, he could pull off some really epic pranks. But just in line of people walked past Jasper. There was Brom, his best friend growing up, and his first school teacher, Mrs. Van Dijk. Everyone was dressed in black and looked really sad. And Jasper saw his own mother at the back of the line, bawling her eyes out. Everyone was heading onto the church, so Jasper followed them inside. And even though Jasper knew no one could see him, he felt a little underdressed, so he sat in the back pew by himself. It didn't take long for Jasper to figure out that he was at the funeral, but I was still pretty shocked when he realized who the funeral was for. The preacher said the guy who died was toilet papering someone's front yard when he got struck by lightning, and you probably already figured out that person was Jasper. So now Jasper knew the truth. He wasn't invisible all this time. He was dead. And he had to sit there while everyone came to the front to the church to say a few words. Usually at funerals, people say nice things about the person who died. But all anyone could talk about was Jasper's annoying pranks. Shake, shake. For the first time ever, Jasper could see that sometimes he took his pranks too far, and he wished he could live his whole life over again and become a fisherman or librarian or just about anything other than the village prankster. After the last person spoke, it was time for the final goodbye. And when Jasper's mom went up to the casket, it was a little hard for Jasper to watch. Jasper had no idea what you're supposed to do at a funeral when you're the person who died. So even though it felt weird, he went up to say his goodbyes too. But there wasn't a body in the casket at all. There was just a pumpkin with a face drawn on it, which kind of looked like Jasper. Then everyone started laughing at once. And that was the moment when Jasper realized he wasn't really dead, and this was all one big prank. Jasper was happy he was alive, but to be honest, he was annoyed the other villagers got on him so good. Besides, he had lots of questions. For one thing, he couldn't figure out how his hand went through that glass donut lid at the bakery. Then George explained that his nephew was a whiz with technology, and the whole donut platter was a hologram. When Jasper asked why he couldn't see his reflection in the mirror, the guy who owned the mirror shop said he'd replace the mirror with televisions that showed an empty sidewalk. Then the people who were in the yoga studios said they almost lost it when Jasper walked on their class. Bloogie, woogie, whoopie, noogie, murph. It turned out the whole village was in on the joke, and since pranking was kind of Jasper's thing, had a hard time admitting they got him. Hee hee, ho ho, ha ha. Jasper told everyone it was a decent prank, but his were way better. Then the preacher said this was actually a double prank because the day before a meteor wiped out the village and everyone in it. That meant they were all dead and everyone was a ghost. Well, this was the second time Jasper found out he was dead in one day, but this time he didn't take it as hard. Jasper always wanted to travel, and if he was a ghost, he could fly whenever he wanted, wherever he wanted. So he climbed to the top of the lighthouse and aimed himself toward Paris. But it turns out the story about the meteor was a prank too. And this time the villagers thought they were the ones who took the prank a little too far. And this is where we're gonna end today. Make sure to subscribe, like, and turn on notifications so when part 2 comes, you'll be notified. Bye.